Youth Biolab Jeunesse.
Hi, I'm Steve.
I'm Megan.
And I'm Angelica.
We're from the Youth Biolab at the Albertson Research Center at St. Boniface Hospital. We all know the job of the hospital is to treat patients. Here at the Research Center, our job is to study disease. If we ever want to cure a disease, we have to understand it first.
When you think of scientists studying disease, you probably think first of things like cancer or more recently, COVID-19. We don't study either of those here. But there are research scientists over at the National Microbiology Lab who are studying infectious diseases like the flu or COVID-19 or Ebola, where they have special equipment that can protect them from the germs that they're working with. There are also groups of cancer scientists working over at Cancer Care Manitoba in Health Sciences Centre, and it's their job to study cancer. We like to keep scientists together so that they can work as a team to come up with cures or treatments for these diseases that we see.
At the Albertson Research Center, we have three big interests. On our fourth floor, we have the Division of Neurodegenerative Disorders. This is where we study diseases that affect the brain and nervous system, just like Alzheimer's disease and type 2 diabetes nerve damage. On our third floor, we have the Institute of Cardiovascular Sciences. This is where we study diseases that affect the heart and cardiovascular system. On our second floor, we have the Canadian Centre for Agri-Food Research in Health and Medicine, and this is where we study food. They research foods that are really good for us, some that might be bad for us, and some that might be so good that they act like medicine.
Our lab, the Youth Biolab, was created so that we can share some of the things that we do here in the Research Center with you. And hopefully we can help you learn a little bit more about how medical science works and understand a little bit more of the science of your own health. COVID-19 has affected all of us this year, at school, at work, at home, and everywhere else. We talked to lots of young people in our job here at the Youth Biolab, and we've heard so many great questions about the pandemic from you this year as we all try and figure out how this virus works and how we get back to normal. One of the ways we're going to beat this virus and get back to normal is to get lots of people vaccinated. They've recently opened up vaccines to people your age, and maybe you're about to get your shot soon. Maybe you have questions about how these things work. We know that we've heard lots of really good questions about how the vaccine does its job, how safe it is, and what it does to your body. Scientists spend lots of time trying to figure out answers to these important questions, and we thought we'd try and answer some of them to help you get ready to roll up your sleeve, get your shot, and help put an end to this pandemic. So one of the first big questions we had is, what is a vaccine and how do they work? Our bodies can fight off germs like viruses and bacteria naturally using our immune system. When a new germ comes along, our different white blood cells try to slow the growth of the germs and eventually destroy all those germy invaders. Some white blood cells gobble germs up, and some learn how to identify these germs as foreign invaders, and they make special targets for them called antibodies. Antibodies are like little targets that bind perfectly to these invaders. They get stuck to them and are kind of like a big red flag that tells killer white blood cells to trap and destroy all the viruses. The problem is, when new viruses like this coronavirus show up, it can take some time for your body to figure out how to find it and kill it. You need to train all those white blood cells so they can recognize and destroy the virus. Your body can do this on its own, but it does take some time, and it's during that time that you might start to get pretty sick. This is where vaccines can help. See, when people become infected with COVID-19, the viruses are way tinier than our own cells. They stick onto cells in our lungs or our airways using these spikes. Once they're attached, they send instructions into our cells that tell our cells to make copies of the virus. Maybe you've heard of DNA. That's the instruction in all of your own cells that tells your cells how to build all the stuff that makes you, you. This virus carries a way smaller set of instructions called RNA that can instruct our cells to build more viruses and turn our own cells into virus factories. So the coronavirus can be copying itself for days inside our own cells before our white blood cells learn to identify it by its little spikes and start making those new antibody targets that stick perfectly to the coronavirus. Vaccines show our body what these spikes look like without actually introducing the real virus into the body. So we won't actually get sick, and our immune cells can get some antibodies ready in case the real virus shows up, and then it can be killed quickly. The more people we get vaccinated, the less the virus will be able to infect others. Vaccines save millions of lives every year. Some diseases like smallpox and polio have been eradicated, which means the germs that cause these diseases are pretty much extinct because so many people are vaccinated. Vaccines for things like the flu, measles, or tetanus keep people from getting these diseases all the time. You've probably had some of these yourself. If enough people get vaccinated for COVID, then we can do the same thing and say goodbye to COVID and hello to all of our friends and family again.
I've heard this vaccine is different from others I've had before. How?
Traditional vaccines are made by growing lots of disease-causing germs in the lab, so germs like bacteria or viruses.
Scientists have to make these germs weak, kill them, or break them into tiny pieces. This way, they can't infect our cells or make us sick, but our body's still able to detect them as intruders, make those antibodies for them, destroy them, and remember what they look like for later. These vaccines work well, but they take a really long time to actually grow enough of the germs in the lab to make millions or even billions of vaccines. Interestingly, the new mRNA vaccines don't contain any virus or bacteria at all. Instead, the vaccine has instructions called messenger RNA that your cells read to make a protein. In the case of coronavirus, our bodies are making this spike protein, which coronaviruses are known for. Our bodies detect that these spike proteins that our cells are making are new and nothing we've ever seen before. Our white blood cells then make antibodies for the spike protein to mark them with a big red flag, and then they get destroyed. If we ever get exposed to the real virus, the immune system remembers the spike proteins from the vaccine, sees that this intruder has those same proteins, and then targets them for destruction right away before they can even make you sick. mRNA vaccines use us to grow the virus protein instead of growing viruses in the lab, then killing them to make a vaccine. So mRNA vaccines are so much faster to make. Remember how the coronavirus uses RNA instructions to copy itself? This is similar, but instead of the whole instruction book, the vaccine only contains the pages on how to make the spike protein, not the whole virus. The spike protein itself can't make you sick, but it can still train your white blood cells to know how to attack the coronavirus if it ever shows up.
Is this new vaccine safe for adults and kids? How do we know? With any medication or treatment, there can be side effects, but in every case, the benefits of treatment always have to outweigh the risk of those side effects happening. Researchers spend a lot of time and care on what goes into vaccines, what the right dose is, testing out how well the vaccine works at preventing sickness, and many, many other things. Some people are worried that the vaccine was developed too quickly and that steps might have been missed in making sure the vaccine works and is safe, but no steps have been skipped. Many safety trials for COVID-19 vaccines start in a lab, looking at how the vaccine and the ingredients in it interact with cells in a dish or animals. These are called preclinical studies. Once all tests to make sure the vaccine and their ingredients are safe and effective in cells and animals, and that there are no other safety concerns, then they'll start to test them in very small groups of people. We call these things clinical trials. For the Pfizer vaccine, the first one to hit the market, they spent 7 months doing clinical trials and monitored tens of thousands of people who received the vaccine to make sure they were protected from COVID, that there was no damage to their bodies from the vaccine, and that there were no severe side effects. All these safety tests and research seem like a lot of work to do in a short amount of time. But COVID was different. So many researchers from so many different backgrounds have spent their time helping develop vaccines and researching COVID to help us understand this disease. This is what can happen when the whole world works to solve a problem. It can happen really quickly. Thanks to all this new research in a new type of vaccine, there's hopes now of developing new vaccines for malaria, tuberculosis, and HIV using this exact same technology.
Does the vaccine hurt? It can feel like a tiny pinch, maybe some pressure in your upper arm as the needle enters your muscle. If you're anything like me, I always think it hurts less if you don't look at the needle going into your arm. Most people feel fine during the vaccine, but might feel some soreness at the injection site for a day. Could there be side effects from the vaccines? Like any other medication, vaccines can have side effects. When we think about the risk of vaccine side effects, we have to look at two big things. First, how bad are the side effects? That can be a big range of things, from no effects at all to unpleasant things like feeling kind of tired or nauseous, to kind of painful, and to actually causing medical problems like severe allergies or a blood clot. Secondly, we also have to look at how common they are, like how many people who are vaccinated actually feel these side effects. Most people feel just fine during the vaccination, but a bit of soreness in the arm later the same day or the next day. Some people feel very tired or a little sick with a bit of a fever for a couple of days after the vaccine, especially after the second dose. These feelings are actually caused by your immune response, and that's a sign that they're building those protective antibodies. The immune response in kids seems to react more gently to most infectious illnesses and vaccines, so it's likely that most young kids won't feel too many effects from the vaccine. Most serious side effects are rare, and Health Canada collects information about vaccine side effects from people who report how they felt after, to make sure we keep studying it as more diverse groups of people are being vaccinated. The chances of serious reactions like allergies are about 6 people in every 100,000 doses, and for less serious reactions like aches, fatigue, or nausea are about 25 out of 100,000 doses. We also have to remember that the risk of not getting the vaccine is we might catch the actual virus, which makes some people very sick. It can cause long-term health problems.
Do kids have to get a second dose like adults do? To have the most protection possible, kids, like adults, will have to get a second dose of the vaccine. The first dose shows that spike protein to our white blood cells, who will help remember that protein and help build a defense. One type of white blood cell stays in our bone marrow and slowly makes antibodies over a long time. The other floats around in the blood, remembering how to recognize the spike, but not making antibodies until it's triggered by seeing more of those spike proteins, either from a second dose of the vaccine or from an actual virus in an infection. So after one dose, the body has a little bit of protection, and people aren't likely to get as sick if they catch COVID-19. But with the second dose, those traveling white blood cells can quickly make lots of antibodies that'll float around in our blood, waiting at the ready to quickly attack the real coronavirus if they see it. When we have more antibodies in the blood, we're way less likely to feel sick or to spread COVID-19 to others if we come in contact with it.
Will this new vaccine change my DNA? There's been some concern that the mRNA vaccine might change our DNA and cause long-term changes in our cells. Let's look at how mRNA works to see why that won't happen. Maybe you've heard of your genes or your DNA as the instructions that make you, from your hair and eye color, all the way down to how your cells and tissues look and behave. Let's zoom in on one tiny cell. This is a pretty basic cell diagram with some of the important parts labeled. Your DNA is stored here in the nucleus. Cells try to protect DNA from damage because you need those instructions for as long as your cells live. When your cells need to build something new like a structure or a messenger protein like a hormone, the building instructions get copied from the DNA in the nucleus and are sent out as messenger RNA out here to the cytoplasm of the cell. The mRNA instruction is read, and then the cell breaks down the RNA after it's done building the thing that's needed. So your cells read mRNA all of the time to make the proteins your cells need to do their jobs. When you get the vaccine, the mRNA in the vaccine goes into your cells through the membrane here. Once it's there, it can't get into the nucleus. That's just the way it works in a cell, so there's no risk of it interacting with your own DNA.
The mRNA tells that cell to make the spike protein, and once it's formed, it sticks on the outside of the surface of the cell to show the protein shape to other white blood cells that can now start making antibodies to attack the real virus if it ever comes along. Once the vaccine mRNA instructions are read in our cells, they're broken down so that we're not left with viral genes floating around in us forever.
Will we need to get this vaccine each year like the flu shot, or will this one last us our lifetime? The answer to this question is pretty complicated because it really depends a lot on how successful we are at lowering COVID-19 infections across the whole world in the near future. The best possible outcome would be if enough people could get vaccinated worldwide that COVID-19 wouldn't have a chance to grow, mutate, and spread. Maybe it could even be eradicated completely. If we can't get rid of this virus completely, though, we'll likely have to be vaccinated again in a year or a few years. Scientists don't know yet how long the antibodies built up in our bodies after a vaccination will stay in our bloodstream. But we think that the vaccine and the booster you get a few weeks later could at least prevent severe cases of COVID-19 for a few years. Just like the flu virus and its vaccine change a little bit each year, as the coronavirus copies itself in cells of infected people, there are sometimes copying mistakes. Even a tiny little change in the instructions could change this virus. We call these things mutants or variants, and each mutation could change the way that the virus looks or behaves. If the mutated virus looks too different, our antibodies might not recognize them anymore. You can sort of picture antibodies like a puzzle piece, each one perfectly matched to connect to the shape of the coronavirus spike protein. If the spike protein puzzle piece changes shape from a mutation, our antibodies can't connect to them anymore. And we would have to create a new vaccine with instructions for this new puzzle piece shape.
Will this vaccine affect my fertility? People who are pregnant or would like to become pregnant may be hesitant to get the vaccine because of the things they've been hearing about on social media. It's always good to check in with a doctor if people have concerns like this, but scientists say there is no need to delay if people are trying to have a baby. The vaccine doesn't interact with reproductive organs in any way that would prevent people from having children. In all of the tests so far, the vaccine hasn't prevented any pregnancies or affected the growth or development of the baby. In early tests for the COVID vaccines, 23 people in a clinical trial actually did successfully become pregnant. As the vaccine is given to more people, scientists are measuring the effects in volunteers. So far 123,000 pregnant people in the United States who have received the vaccine have registered to help scientists learn if there are any rare vaccine side effects on pregnancy.
What if people have some allergies and might be allergic to the vaccine? People can be allergic to a huge variety of things. So just like anything else that goes into your body, whether it's food or medicine, there's a chance that people could have allergic reactions to this vaccine. Most allergic reactions, especially serious ones, would happen very fast. So when people get their vaccine shot, they wait at the vaccination clinic for at least 15 minutes. And if they do have an allergic reaction, there are healthcare workers there to help them. There really isn't much need to worry. Serious allergic reactions are very, very rare. Only about 11 cases per million Pfizer doses, which is way less likely than you are to have a serious allergic reaction to peanuts, say. Before anyone is vaccinated, they're always asked if they've had any serious allergic reactions to anything in the past. Most people who react to the vaccine would have experienced a bad allergic reaction to other things. And knowing this, vaccination clinics will ask these people to stay a little bit longer after receiving their vaccine just to make sure everything is okay. The new mRNA vaccines actually have fewer ingredients in them than common vaccines like for the flu. And serious allergic reactions seem to be very, very rare. Some people have had smaller allergies or allergic reactions to the vaccine, like an itchy rash or hives, and are treated easily with allergy medicines like antihistamines.
When will our lives go back to normal? Our lives will one day go back to normal. When will that day come? We're not sure yet. But if we can reduce the spread of COVID-19 right now by getting enough of our population vaccinated and reducing the number of virus factories running around in public, then normal will be back sooner than later. Right now, we're waiting until our community has reached herd immunity. That's when enough people have been fully vaccinated, and it's very unlikely the virus can spread, even to those people who can't be vaccinated. Because COVID is so new, scientists aren't sure of the exact number, but they think once 70 to 85% of people are fully vaccinated, we will reach herd immunity. You never hear about outbreaks of rubella or rotavirus because these are things we get vaccinated against when we're young. We have herd immunity for these diseases and many others. At the end of the day, it's up to us to decide when our lives go back to normal by doing our best to stop the spread of COVID-19. Thanks for watching. We hope we answered some of your questions about COVID-19 and vaccines. If you still have questions, send us an email or message us through our Instagram or Twitter. Thanks for joining us and stay curious.
Make sure to click like and subscribe for more videos and follow us on Instagram and Twitter. To support the Youth Biolab's ongoing programming and expansion plans, please contact St. Boniface Hospital Foundation at stbhf.ca.